We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not. That's not a leak. That's not a rumor. That's not Twitter. That's what President Trump said on national news in January 2026, 1 week after the capture of Venezuela's president Maduro. Not we're considering it, not we're negotiating, whether they like it or not. And then came the follow-up, the part that should have made every foreign ministry in Europe sit up straight. I would like to make a deal the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way. Most people heard that and thought, another headline, another Trump moment, another news cycle. But if you understand maps, you heard something else entirely. You heard the sound of an alliance system cracking. Because Greenland isn't just an island, it's the keystone of NATO's northern defense. And when you remove a keystone, everything above it stops being stable. Let's get the basics out of the way. Greenland belongs to Denmark. Denmark isn't neutral. Denmark isn't sort of allied. Denmark is a founding NATO member since 1949, which means Greenland is protected by one sentence that matters more than every speech ever given at NATO headquarters combined. Article 5. An attack on one member is an attack on all. That's not symbolism. That's the deal. And when Denmark's prime minister said that forced action on Greenland would mean the end of NATO, that wasn't drama, that was math. Because here's the question no one wants to answer out loud. If the United States violates the sovereignty of a NATO ally, who enforces Article 5 against the United States? Germany? France? The UK? Be serious. NATO has no mechanism for this. It never did. Because NATO was built on one assumption. The threat comes from outside the alliance, not from the country holding the keys. So, why Greenland? Why now? Why risk blowing up the most successful alliance in modern history over frozen rock nobody thinks about? Because geography doesn't care about alliances. And Greenland sits on one of the most important pieces of the global map almost no one talks about. It's called the GIUK Gap, Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom. That triangle forms a natural choke point between the Arctic Ocean and the Atlantic. Every Russian submarine leaving the Arctic, every bomber, every surface vessel, they have to pass through it. During the Cold War, NATO packed this gap with sonar, submarines, and listening stations. The goal was simple. Nothing moves without being seen. That infrastructure never disappeared, but now the Arctic itself is changing. Ice is retreating, shipping lanes are opening, routes that cut Asia-Europe transit times by up to 40%. And all of these routes eventually funnel through choke points. The most important one? Greenland's waters. This isn't about today's map, it's about tomorrow's, and tomorrow is already visible. Then there's what's under the ice. Greenland holds massive rare earth deposits, the minerals behind wind turbines, electric vehicles, missiles, smartphones, and basically every piece of modern technology you're holding right now. China dominates rare earth production. Greenland breaks that monopoly. So, the strategic logic becomes very simple. If we don't control it, someone else will. Russia, China, pick your rival. From a purely strategic standpoint, it makes sense. And if you want to understand the geography behind what happens next before the headlines catch up, smash that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning. Here's what happens if the US actually moves on Greenland by force. Denmark invokes Article 5. And then, does Germany send troops to fight American forces in the Arctic? Does France? Does Britain? No. Not because they don't believe in NATO, but because they can't. Militarily, impossible. Economically, catastrophic. Politically, unthinkable. So, NATO doesn't fight. NATO dissolves. Not with tanks rolling through Brussels, with silence, with hesitation, with everyone realizing the guarantee doesn't mean what it used to, and that's when the real consequences start. Because NATO isn't just a military pact. It's the reason Germany doesn't have nuclear weapons. It's the reason Eastern European countries aren't sandwiched between Russia and a militarized independent Germany. It's the reason Europe has avoided major war longer than at any point in modern history. Remove that framework, and countries don't relax, they compete. Poland and the Baltic suddenly, without American protection, face Russia alone, or scramble to cut their own deals with Moscow. Germany, no longer confident in the Atlantic Alliance, begins reconsidering its own defense posture, maybe its own nuclear capability. France accelerates its push for strategic autonomy, which is a polite way of saying independent military power. Turkey, already drifting, stops pretending it cares about the West at all. And Russia doesn't need to invade anyone. It just watches the structure that contained it for 75 years quietly come apart. This doesn't weaken America because of lost firepower. It weakens America because the global order runs on one thing: credibility. And once that's gone, why should Japan believe US guarantees? Why should South Korea? Why should Taiwan? Why should anyone? Now, zoom out. Greenland didn't appear out of nowhere. It came 1 week after Venezuela. In early January 2026, U.S. forces captured Nicolas Maduro and moved him to federal custody in New York. 2 operations, 2 regions, same logic. Venezuela was enabled by geography. Caracas sits 15 miles from the Caribbean Sea. 15. That's not a prolonged war. That's speed. Coastal capitals compress response times. Warm water shortens logistics. Power arrives fully formed. Panama, Grenada, same pattern. Compare that to Baghdad, 340 miles inland. Months of build-up, coalitions, logistics, geography decides tempo. And Venezuela's oil, it's not just vast, it's close to water. Extraction isn't just about resources, it's about flow. Now, compare Greenland. Frozen, remote, infrastructure poor, alliance entangled. Same strategic logic, completely different terrain. That's why Venezuela was fast. And Greenland, if it happens, won't be. Not because it's harder, because it costs more. Greenland would cost alliances everywhere. So, when people ask, will the US actually take Greenland? They're asking the wrong question. The real question is, what kind of world makes this even thinkable? Empires don't expand randomly. They move along corridors. Warm water enables extraction. Choke points enable control. Cold corridors enable denial. And sometimes power waits. Because the geography that demands patience today becomes the geography that permits speed tomorrow. When the ice melts enough, when the lanes open enough, when rivals move close enough, Greenland isn't next like Venezuela was, but it is next on the map. And the map doesn't care about treaties. Denmark's prime minister said it plainly. This would be the end of NATO. The real question isn't whether she's right. It's whether that still matters. Because if the choice is between strategic control and alliance credibility, and that choice has already been signaled, then we're not debating the future. We're watching it arrive. And if all this feels chaotic, if it feels disconnected, if it feels bigger than politics, you weren't following the map, you were following headlines. And the map, it was there the whole time.